Hey guys, tonight we're stitching through time itself. No time machines required, just a needle and some questionable life choices. Picture this. Your fingertips brush a beeswax taper from a long-dead chandler's shop. The match hisses. Suddenly, you're spelunking in honeyed light across fabric older than your great-grandmother's grudges. Heads up. If the phrase thread tension already makes you sweat, you might not survive this episode. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and current time. Let's see if we've got night owls in Novosibirsk or early birds in Edmonton burning the midnight oil. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The candlewick sputters. Its flame licks the air like a cat tasting rain. Medieval guildswomen once swore beeswax purified the workspace. Turns out, it just hides the stench of your fourth consecutive sewing hour despair. Your thumb grazes linen, so weathered it feels like holding a sigh. Historians still argue whether 14th century seamstresses drank thistle wine or just cried into their thimbles. Either way, you mimic their posture now, spine curved like a question mark over the work table. Threading the needle takes 3 tries, each failure sharpening the air with whispers of improper guild initiation. The hearth exhales a breath of resinous pine, glazing your tools in temporary gold. You've heard rumors, right? That Napoleon's tailor-sewed battle plans into coat linings, proof that passive aggression transcends centuries. Your scissors gleam with less dramatic intent. The apron pattern unfolds, a mosaic of charcoal marks and stubborn creases. Guild archives claim these designs warded off evil spirits, or maybe just overly chatty apprentices. Your pinky traces a sigil that might mean abundance, or beware of splinters. No one's entirely sure. The candle drips wax onto a saucer, each splat mimicking the tap of a ghostly loom shuttle, or maybe that's just your sleep-deprived eardrums. 18 words per sentence max, 18 words per weight, focus. The linen resists your chalk, swallowing guidelines like secrets. You recall reading that Byzantine silk merchants rated fabrics by how well they muffled screams, a dark critique of palace intrigue, or just ancient Yelp reviews gone sideways. The needle plunges, its eye winks at you as thread glides through. First stitch, a lopsided monument to ambition. Pivot to the shears, their jaws yawn wide enough to swallow your regrets. Guildmothers always said cut loud, so quiet, probably why their ghostly specters still side-eye your hesitation. The blade parts cloth with a sound like a sighing librarian. Fun fact, 16th century, German weavers believed snipping threads at midnight attracted spectral clients, which explains nothing about your current life choices. Firelight paints monstrous shapes on the wall. Your hands cast dragon shadows over the growing hemline. You're pretty sure that's not symbolism. Listen, the rhythm's forming now. prick of needle, pull of thread, drag of shears. Catastrophe in D minor. The candles shrink into stubs, their wax pooling like miniature apocalypses. Someone in 1300s Flanders did this exact motion under a thatched roof while wolves howled. You cough as dust from ancient threads invades your lungs. Congrats. You're literally breathing history. Ever notice how fabric has moods? This linen's all crisp defiance now. Just wait till the starch wears off. You fold a selvage edge, nail-biting over quarter-inch margins. Perfectionism here could earn praise from a 12th century guildmaster or a one-way trip to the stocks. The needle slips, its point stabs your thumb. A blood bead swells, garnet bright. Let's call it organic dye and pretend it's intentional. Midnight creeps in wearing velvet slippers. The apron's waistband takes shape, a crooked smile in thread. Your lower back protests in forgotten dialects of posture-related oaths. Beneath the table, a cat's tail flicks, your only audience besides the ancestors. Don't overthink how the candle flame warps when you exhale. Don't wonder who'll wear this apron next century. Just loop the thread. Not at once, twice, thrice to honor the triple goddess of seam rippers. Your eyelids sag. The hearth's down to embers carving cave paintings on the walls. One last stitch, a defiant X marking tomorrow's problem. The scissors click shut with finality or surrender. Shadows pool in the apron's folds like liquid obsidian. Somewhere, a guildswoman's ghost nods, or maybe just judges your tension consistency. The last candle drowns in its wax, a little death, a little rebirth. You press your palm to the still warm linen. The ashwood loom greets you with splintered wisdom, centuries of oiled grooves worn smooth by guildwomen's palms. You press your thumb into a knot where two beams meet, feeling the ghost nudge of a long-dead weaver, adjusting your grip. Warp threads thrum under your left hand, their tension precise as harp strings before a symphony's first note. Historians note medieval looms often stood taller than the weavers themselves, monuments to cloth's sacred algebra. Yet no textbook mentions how the wood still smells faintly of forest snow, or how drafts make the frame croon like a drowsy grandmother. Your shuttle case glints, 53 bronze spools whispering of silk roads and smuggled dyes. You choose indigo-twined linen, threads spun so tight they hiss through the heddle's eye. Some claim Elizabethan spinsters encoded treason in tapestry patterns, though experts debate whether curlicues ever hid papal spy codes. The truth, your own warp hides a secret, 3 skipped threads forming a glyph only your apprentice might notice. Assuming she stops using the distaff as a back scratcher. Moonlight slants through the oilcloth window, silvering your work. You've seen illuminations showing nuns weaving by lamplight, their wimples framing faces taut with holy focus. None captured the real choreography. Thighs braced against the treadles, the way a sneeze could snap 6 hours. Work. Your foot finds the pedal, oak creaking as shafts rise. The shed opens, a momentary cave where shuttle becomes dart, becomes fugitive. Miss the pass. Prepare for the Guildmother's eyebrow lift, a gesture that could curdle milk at 20 paces. Threads cross like lovers sworn to separate at dawn. Beat the weft too hard, fabric grows stiff as a bishop's collar. Too gentle, the weave sags like a drunkard's grin. Your temples throb the rhythms off. You pause, inhaling resin from the beam. 8 generations of oiled would release their counsel. Listen through your kneecaps. The loom speaks in floorboard tremors. A fringe theory claims Viking sails mimicked weaving patterns that longships navigated by feeling cloth tension shift with currents. You almost believe it, your own soul's tingling as the treadles sync with your pulse. 3 rows bloom under your hands, navy threads swallowing moonlight. A moth dive bombs your left ear, its wings powdering your neck with eclipse dust. You flick it away, knuckles grazing the temple sword. Medieval weavers called that curved rod a weaver's kiss, its iron bite a reminder to mind the selvage. Your grandmother insisted it warded off stitch witches, those spectral crones who unraveled seams for spite. You're pragmatic, suspecting the dents in yours came from her throwing it at mice. Dawn licks the horizon, straw gold light revealing your progress. The fabric ripples, each ridge a topographic map of your focus. Historians still argue whether the devil's knot in Coventry tapestries represented heresy or just sloppy threading. You know the answer. Your own first sampler hit a squashed spider near the hem. 20 years later, you spot its 8-legged silhouette whenever fatigue blurs your vision. The shuttle slows its dance, becoming a dirge. Your shoulder blades fuse, a single fossilized ache. Time to cheat. You palm a thimble-sized lead weight, slipping it into the warp's embrace. Guild rules forbid counterbalance tricks, but you've met enough dead weavers to know they smuggled wine, flasks, into their distaffs. The loom groans, a bass note rattling your molars. For a heartbeat, the weight levitates. Then threads snap taut, perfect alignment. You smirk, mouthing apologies to the shrine of Saint Distaff, while making mental notes for tomorrow's hangover cure. Ashwood exhales, sap scent cutting through the fug of sheep fat lamp oil. Your last pass glimmers, a river of shadow trapped in thread. The village bell tolls, 4th hour. 5th. You stopped counting when the crickets surrendered to dawn's advance. Fingertips brush the cloth's growing expanse. Not bad for a night's work haunted by predecessors who definitely, absolutely, weren't peering over your shoulder. The scissors gleam cold steel, biting into your callus. You've avoided this moment for 3 days, fingering the fabric's raw edge like a scribe, procrastinating his final stroke. Guild law brands the first cut as irrevocable, a commitment sharper than any blade. Historians note medieval seamstresses often whispered prayers to Saint Eulalia, patroness of sharp tools and sharper decisions. You're less pious, your mantras just an exhale as linen parts with a crunch like snow underboot. Your thumb finds the selvage, that tight-woven border tougher than a tavern door. Forged in the 12th century, Arab weavers called it the breath of the loom, their secret to stopping unravels. Your guildmother taught you to taste the edge, literal spit testing for starch content. You dodged tradition, hypothesizing her last apprentice died of fabric poisoning. Moonlight glides along the blades, forged from Toledo steel, quenched in bull's blood if the smith's tales hold truth. A fringe manuscript claims Charlemagne's coronation robe was trimmed with Roman senators' toga threads, though carbon dating says otherwise. You adjust your grip, honoring the guild's first rule. Measure thrice, slice once. Too bad your measuring reed snapped yesterday, forcing you to use a barley stalk that's currently getting devoured by your cat. Left hand pinches the marked line, cloth cool as a crypt wall. Right hand tenses, scissors moan open. Some say French couturiers buried their shears at crossroads to bless new collections, a ritual involving eggshells and blindfolded roosters. You're pragmatic. Just spit on the hinge so it doesn't shriek like a banshee mid-cut. The first snip sings clean as a guillotine's goodbye. Fabric falls away, a cascade of triangles suggesting future patchwork disasters. Women's sleeves in 15th century Florence hid tiny knives in pleated cuffs, though experts debate whether they stabbed lovers or just trimmed loose threads. Your team practicality, your own blades for slicing through lies, and tangled bobbin spaghetti. The scissors hiss again, each cut releasing a puff of flax dust. Your nose twitches ripe for a sneeze that could turn your apron into avant-garde fringe. 3 breaths, 7 cuts. The crumpled offcuts form a snowdrift at your feet. Historians still argue whether 14th century selvage crimping imitated Moorish mosaics or just lazy hemming. You side with laziness. The guild's sacred technique looks suspiciously like your drunk uncle's papier-mâché paste jobs. Your pinky traces the new edge, so straight it could divide rival kingdoms. Too bad apprentice Meg's hemming skills resemble a drunk caterpillar's silk roadmap. The guildmother's ghost voice barks. Shears are truth-tellers. Girl, no do-overs. You fling open the shutters. Dawn rubs its gold-rimmed eyes. The severed selvage shivers in the draft, a threadbare snake retreating from sunlight. Babylonian tailors buried cutoffs under temple floors, believing cloth scraps hoarded bad luck. You're saving yours for stuffing a future pillow, preferably one to scream into when taxes come due. Blades click shut, steel tongues silenced. Your knuckles ache like they've been lectured by a puritanical thimble. A 1398 guild ledger lists a fine for reckless scissor flourishes, equivalent to 18 hens. You glance at your own flamboyant shears, notes flapping from their handles like medieval sticky memos. Ratings for tomorrow's regret. 70-30 in favor of back spasms. The cut fabric lies docile now, edges crisper than a cardinal's reprimand. You pour vinegar water to set the weave, the air puckering sour. Tudor seamstresses used urine for the same task, half believing royal chamber pots bestowed luster. Your own concoction smells suspiciously like failed mead, but no guild enforcer needs to know. Sweat beads on the scissors spine, they demand wiping. 16th century Germersheim superstition claimed unclean shears invited stitch demons, their teeth like rusted pins. You buff the blade semi-reverently, polishing your reflection into a funhouse mirror of exhaustion. Your left eyelid twitches, a Morse code warning to quit before you cross-stitch your thumb to the table. One last inspection. The apron's shape emerges, a geometric ghost hungry for pockets and purpose. You hum a tavern ditty band by Three Popes, the rhythm syncing with the floorboard's creaks. Guild archives mention a 1324 scandal involving scalloped hems and a runaway bishop, but your mind's too numb for old gossip. Stow the shears. Unkink your spine, vertebrae cracking like a code. The cut edges whisper. You've survived the blade, now survive the needle. Tomorrow's problem. Tonight's victory smells of starch, steel, and the faint hope of breakfast. The indigo vat breathes its surface, a black mirror for the shuddering candle. You sink the apron's cotton into the gloom, fingertips brushing liquid cold as a knight's gauntlet. Plant-derived blues dominated medieval dyeing, though experts think Viking scralings traded lichen-based recipes from Greenland ice caves. Your vat's secret. 7 pounds of woad leaves fermented in a donkey urine base. Guild regulations require pretending it's rainwater. The cloth drinks greedily, fibers swelling like a drunk monk at last call. 16th century dyers believed indigo vats housed spirits. They'd toss honeycakes into the murk to appease them. You hum a lullaby instead, your version involving fewer hexes and more sarcastic commentary about the smell. The apron's pallor shifts, pale to pond scum green, as oxygen flees the fibers. Air hunger sets in. You hoist the cloth, dripping sludge that smells like a goblin's laundry day. Historians still argue whether Egyptian mummy wrappings used fermented indigo or just Nile mud. Your wrists quiver fabric heavy as a hanged man's confession. The first contact with air works its magic. Sickly green surrenders to deep celestial blue. You dunk again, 3 more dips for richness. Each immersion stains your cuticles with temporary tattoos. Byzantine emperors reserved Tyrian purple for royalty, but your guild's indigo apron rivals their hues. Not that you'll mention this. Last year's accidental maroon dye incident still haunts the ledger's penalty column. Rhythm takes over. Dip, count 12 heartbeats, lift, watch the alchemy. A 1390s dye master journal recommends singing psalms backward during this phase. You've substituted your aunt's biscuit recipe. Darker and darker. The fabric becomes a hole in the world. Medieval nuns added crushed glass to vats for heavenly shimmer. Their aprons reportedly blinded 3 popes during inspections. Your pinky twitches. A drip escapes down the vat's clay side. You scrape it with a spoon. Guild rules demand every drop's accounted for. Elizabethan spies used indigo stains as invisible ink. Their messages, blooming under sour milk, could have saved your cousin Gregory from that ill-advised love poem debacle. Moonlight slinks through the workshop window, your hands now alien, blue-veined and gloved in shadow. The apron ripples as you wring it, a midnight waterfall gushing into the runoff barrel. 17th century Bordeaux merchants sold counterfeit indigo pellets made of ash and ground snails. Your guild's tester kit includes a flea comb and a hungry moth. Stretching the cloth on the tenter frame feels like disciplining a rebellious storm cloud. Wooden pegs groan. You mock their complaints with a chorus of creaky door impressions. Ottoman dyers stretched fabrics using catgut lines. Their apprentices allegedly napped in the frames during siesta hour. The apron's edges curl, then stiffen into submission under your thumbnail's persuasion. A hot rinse seals the hue. Water spirals down the drain like liquid obsidian. Your cauldron's copper belly reflects a warped grin, part artisan, part sleep-deprived goblin. Renaissance Italy banned indigo imports to protect local woad markets. Their enforcers punished smugglers with scarlet dye dunkings. You toast their pettiness with a thimble of lukewarm ale. Final inspection. The apron hangs, a flag of night stolen from desert skies. Historians still argue whether Andean weavers discovered indigo fixation before or after perfecting llama spit adhesive. You're just relieved the dye didn't skew violet again. Blisters bubble on your palms, each a tiny monument to tonight's 87 dunks. Cold air bites as you open the shutter. The real night sky pales against your creation. Prussian blue won't hit Europe for another 3 centuries, but you've already outshone their future formula. Tomorrow brings stitching, the grind of needles, and the inevitable blood sacrifice to the hemming gods. For now, the apron drips its final secrets onto the stone floor, each droplet whispering, "This is how we hold back the dawn." The needle's bronze tip hovers, your breath stills like a hair caught mid-flight. Cotton meets metal with a sigh, fibers parting like temple curtains. 17th century seamstresses ground old bones into needles after famines, hunger sharpening both edges and ingenuity. Your thread glides through the eye, a miracle rivaling saints' visions, until it knots. You mutter words that make the guildmother confiscate your thimble for a week. First stitch bites, a crescent moon of pulled tension. Blunt force trauma to fabric becomes an art form here. Ottoman embroiderers hid verses from the Quran in seam allowance, their needles blessed with rosewater and paranoia. Your own stitches conspire, hiding a breadcrumb-sized bloodstain from that cursed pin cushion incident. 3 loops in rhythm finds you. Push, pull, pivot. The needle pirouettes like a drunk ballerina. Historians recently found Viking sailcloth, mendied with walrus whiskers, apparently perfect for icy winds and dramatic beard comparisons. You make do with flaxen thread, its tawny hue echoing the tavern ale you're not drinking. Orion winks through the window, his belts 3 stars, mocking your progress. Each stitch mirrors their cold blink. A loose thread snakes upward, you trap it beneath your thumb. Renaissance tailor guilds buried snipped threads in consecrated ground, lest rivals curse their hemlines. You flick yours into the candle flame, watch it writhe like a miniature firework. Palm sweat betrays you. The needle slips, piercing your index finger's side. A crimson bead swells, effectively dyeing your linen for free. Medieval surgeons used sewing needles for sutures, which explains those patient satisfaction scrolls full of creative curses. You suck the wound, tasting iron and yesterday's garlic stew. Back to work. The bronze glints, now flecked with your DNA for future archaeologists. Each puncture pulls the indigo-dyed edges closer, a slow motion, zipper sealing night itself. Your pinky cramps, a reminder that scribes got carpal tunnel before it was fashionable. A moth dive bombs the candle. You shield the flame, suddenly gatekeeper of both light and lunatic insects. Byzantine silk weavers worked under armed guard, their worms housed in throne-like bamboo cages. Your security measures, a decrepit cat named Sir Drulsalot, and sheer indifference. The thimble grows heavy, its dimpled crown imprinting your fingertip like a royal seal. You rotate it, the tin alloy cold against your wedding band callus. 18th century sailors stitched their own sails, and reportedly their wounds with threads tarred in rum. Your kneecap throbs agreement that one winter you tried ergonomic cross-legged stitching. Midnight creaks the floorboards, your needle ducks and weaves, a box or two stubborn to retire. Perspiration beads on your nape, threads cling like jealous lovers. Historians still argue whether Incan quipu knots influenced early embroidery patterns or just confused conquistadors. You plow ahead, 12 stitches per inch or bust. A knuckle crack echoes, your spine answering with a chorus of pops. The candle gutters, shadows leap across the apron's breast like dark ballerinas. French courtiers smuggled sewing kits in their pomanders, scented oranges stuffed with scissors and spite. Your own citrus-free workspace smells of beeswax and poor life choices. Final stretch, the needle dulls its tip, rounded from combat, with tenacious threads. You sharpen it against a whetstone, screeches scattering mice in the walls. Mogul artisans set diamond dust into needle eyes, because why mend a shirt without opulence? Your version glints with stubbornness and low-grade bronze. Thread's end approaches, a frayed ambassador demanding closure. You knot it thrice, the guild's sacred number, and bite the excess. The severed thread flutters down graceful as a dying swan. Chroniclers claim Betsy Ross's first flag stitch was actually sewn by her disgruntled apprentice. History's eternal interns never get credit. Orion retreats, his starry quiver emptied of night. Your apron lies transformed, a constellation of stitches, anchoring Indigo to earth. The needle rests, still warm from the fight, its next battle waiting in the workbasket's shadows. You flex your hand, the palm creased like parchment, and blow out the candle. Darkness tastes like victory and candle smoke. Moonlight bleeds through the shutters. Its silver puddle licks the folded hem. Fingertips graze linen's edge, crisper than parchment left in a desert tomb. You pin the fold, 1 part discipline, 2 parts desperation. Colonial mantua makers used oyster shells as makeshift irons, their pearlescent insides leaving mineral kisses on silk. Your own creases rely on elbow grease and a stubborn disregard for sleep. Ghost stitches emerge, nearly invisible tacking that vanishes like breath on a mirror. Each tiny loop whispers, "I wasn't here." An Edwardian sewing manual insists proper ladies should finish hems during the waning moon, allegedly preventing unraveled marriages. You work under waxing moonlight, rebellion simmering with every hidden knot. The floorboards chart your progress. Each plank crossed by the indigo shadow feels like cheating time. Archaeologists found Roman women's girdles hemmed with curses against loose threads. May Jupiter strike the fool who splits this seam. You murmur protection spells against dropped stitches and intrusive roosters. Scissors glint. You sever the waxed thread with surgical precision. The cut end falls like a silent punchline. 17th century Dutch painters depicted sewing maids with dislocated thumbs, tribute to the trade's quiet brutality. Your own joints hum a folk song about ice packs and regret. Hem secured, you stand to admire the apron's new horizon. Moonlight etches the silhouette across your ankle, a temporary tattoo of discipline. Historians still argue whether Victorian mourning aprons used black thread for grief or just to hide coal smudges. You trace the nearly invisible stitches. They ripple like secrets under your touch. Midnight creaks approval. The iron waits cold and judgmental for tomorrow's creases. You stretch your shadow on the wall, mimics a hanged marionette. A moth kamikazes into your forehead, nature's reminder that all artists suffer for their craft. Fabric whispers against woolen skirts as you circle the worktable. The hem's gravity feels different now, charged with the weight of crossed milestones. Tudor apprentices paid in buttons and bacon rinds would have killed for your thread supply. You resist the urge to test its durability with dramatic cape swishes. The last knot cinches tight, a prisoner's final confession. Your thimble finger throbs Morse code for mercy. Medieval laundresses allegedly used urine to set dyes. You make a note to Google that later. For now, the apron sways on its peg, absorbing moonlight like a second skin. Dawn's first yawn stains the sky. You collapse into the rocker, knees popping like champagne corks. Hemming complete, but the guild's unspoken rule whispers. Tomorrow's work already sharpens its claws. A dust bunny drifts across the floor, your only spectator, as shadows retreat. You close burned-out eyes, linen's crisp edge, imprinted on your retina like a lover's last wave. Dawn bleeds through cracked shutters. You squint at linen squares, laid like tombstones on the workbench. Each scrap holds potential, a coiled secret waiting to unfurl. Your scissors slice fabric parts with the soft gasp of betrayal. 16th century seamstresses smuggled Protestant pamphlets in hems, their rebellion stitched in plain sight. You hum, "These pockets won't cradle heresy, just rosemary and petty grievances." The first square resists folding, its edges curl like dried petals. You press it flat with a thimble-polished thumbnail. A 1723 sampler from Marseille shows pockets embroidered with protective runes, hexes disguised as daisies. Your needle skims the edge, no witchcraft here, just triple stitches and spite. Two inverted corners meet, their embrace secured with knots Guildmistress Agnes called Widow's Resolve. Archaeologists found a mummy's apron containing garlic cloves. Apparently undead, tradeswomen feared vampires too. You tuck a mint leaf into the half-formed pocket. Its crisp scent crushes the room's staleness. The second square falls crooked, you swear, in a language your grandmother wouldn't recognize. Historians still argue whether medieval work aprons used pockets or just trusty desperation. You stab the misaligned fabric, teaching it geometry through violence. Needlework reveals truths. Your stitches tighten near the left corner, slacken by the right. A bead of sweat rolls off your nose. The linen drinks it greedily. 18th century prison guards confiscated needles after inmates sewed escape maps into their uniforms. You smirk. These pockets couldn't hide a prayer, let alone a skeleton key. Moonlight hijacks your candle. Shadows stretch the growing pouch into a yawning mouth. Twin seams slope downward. You correct them, with fingers numb from repetition. Venetian courtesans allegedly sewed love notes into men's doublets using hair thread. Your own thread, coarse flax, would excommunicate any would-be Romeo. The guild's iron heats nearby. Its scorch marks mimic hieroglyphs on a furnace wall. You press the first pocket's flap. Steam hisses like a betrayed lover. 17th century Dutch widows wore mourning aprons, with pockets lining the hem, ready to collect grief's leavings. Your apron rejects melancholy. Its pouches gape open, hungry for sharper treasures. Blistered fingertips test the pocket's depth. 3 fingers vanish into the abyss. A loose thread spirals upward. You sever it midair. A rebellion against fallibility. Someone in King Louis' court died with a pocketful of poisoned sachets, evil tucked behind innocent embroidery. You spit on the knot, an old trick to seal intentions. Sunrise arrives uninvited. Its glare exposes the asymmetry you'd hoped to ignore. The left pocket droops. Its corner sags like a drunkard's eyelid. Tudor apprentices stole candle wax to waterproof their apron pouches, crossing oily fingers during guild inspections. You rub beeswax along the seam, defiance, smells faintly of honeycomb and shortcuts. Both pockets now hang with false confidence. They've passed judgment, but not yet faced reality. You slip a copper coin into one, an offering to the gods of structural integrity. The metal winks at you, a jaunty pupil in a fabric eye. Early American midwives kept umbilical cords in their apron pockets, talismans against restless spirits. Yours cradles spare buttons and the ghost of better decisions. Thread ends dangle like spider legs. You burn them with candle flame. The scorch marks grin charcoal punctuation in a linen sentence. Guild archives mention a 1698 lawsuit over pockets lined with stolen silk. Crime hides in plain stitch. Your own linings are unrepentant hemp rough enough to exfoliate sins. The finished pouches sway a pendulum, counting down to the next imperfection. You lean back, your spine crackles like crumpled vellum. Tomorrow's work lurks in the corner, all thread and gleaming needles. For now, the pockets yawn empty, ready to swallow whatever comes next. You sift through bone buttons salvaged from a shipwrecked merchant's trunk, their ivory surfaces pocked by decades of salt. Rip-thin toggles clatter like teeth as you separate them from clay beads. Medieval guildswomen boiled horse bones into buttons, each groove stained with soot for cheap elegance. Your fingers hover, choosing between a hook shaped like a crescent moon and one resembling a rooster's claw. The guild's star charts sprawl beneath your elbow, constellation. Patterns dictate button spacing. 6 for the left strap, 8 for the right, an alignment mimicking the Pleiades' spring position. Historians still argue whether these numeric codes were practical measurements or coded rebellion against sumptuary laws. You snort tonight. They're just arithmetic, keeping your apron from sliding into the hearth. A bead rolls toward the table's edge. You catch it midair, with a palm calloused from shuttle wounds. 17th century Venetian dyers soaked buttons in urine for that coveted gold sheen, a fact you'll never unlearn. Your own buttons steeped in rosemary oil, instead cheaper than dignity at the markets. Clay discs chill your fingertips. Their glaze mimics Egyptian faience, but cracks under pressure. Archaeologists found Nubian traders embedding beetle wings into toggle fastenings, flashes of emerald to dazzle desert travelers. You settle for cobalt paint, dabbing it on with a boar bristle brush gone stiff. The first toggle pierces the linen. It resists, fabric fraying like a nervous whisper. You twist the bone shaft, slow, relentless, until the whole surrenders. 18th century sailors swore buttons made from whalebone hummed during storms. Your creation stays stubbornly mute. A bead slips. Its string tangles into a knot resembling Guildmistress Marget's infamous scowl. You pick at the snarl, tongue clenched, until the thread snaps. Someone in Cromwell's England hid papal pardons inside hollow buttons, heresy stashed in accessory limbo. Your beads carry no secrets, just the weight of your 5th unanswered yawn. Moonlight glazes the worktable, your shadow puppets a hunchbacked crone sewing her own shadow. You secure the last clay bead, its glaze still tacky, with a hitch not older than the guild itself. Ottoman seamstresses allegedly wove horsehair into fastenings to repel the evil eye, itchy but effective. Your apron's straps boast no supernatural defenses, just spite and double-stitched eyelets. The button array mocks you, left side perfect, right side drunkenly askew. You yank the skewed toggle, linen groans, but holds. Victorian factory girls stole brass fastenings to pawn for gin money, a tradition you honor by sipping lukewarm chamomile instead. Dawn's first sparrows critique your work, their chirps sharp as guild inspection notes. You test the closures, toggles click against beads, in a rhythm mimicking your molars grinding. A 1543 ledger mentions a French tailor jailed for casting buttons from melted cathedral lead, sacrilege sold as piety. Your own materials are blissfully mundane, no curses, just questionable craftsmanship. The final bead refuses to seat, its hole puckered like a disapproving mouth. You stab it with an all-wood squeals until the path clears. 17th century Dutch portraits hide button messages in Morse-like dot patterns, too clever by half. Your buttons declare nothing, except maybe I regret skipping supper. Candlelight flickers, the finished fastenings cast claw-shaped shadows on the wall. You cinch the apron around your waist, clay beads cold against your hips. Mongol horsemen wore 7 buttons on their jackets to symbolize the Ursa Major. You've got 15 and a half. Close enough. Thread scraps litter the floor. You sweep them into a pile, resembling an albino hedgehog. The guild's iron lies cold, its handle still warm from your last crisis. Tomorrow's problem lurks in a cedar box, all embroidery hoops and judgment. But tonight, the buttons hold. For now, crimson thread hisses through the needles. Your 3rd attempt, since the candle climbed past its halfway slump. Byzantine empresses once commissioned silk portraits of saints, using this precise shade, madder root boiled with iron nails for blood-dark permanence. Your own dye job came cheaper, a scandalous haggling match with a dyer's apprentice behind the tannery. The first stitch pierces the apron's breast panel linen, resisting like overripe fruit. Poppies demand curved petals, each arc a battle between tremor and tension. Victorian mourners embroidered hair into funeral wreaths, macabre bouquets that dangled above parlors like weeping chandeliers. You make a mental note, never accept black thread from widows. 6 stitches in your needle snags. The floss frays, strands splaying like a courtesan's split ends. Historians still argue whether Ottoman tulip motifs hid maps to secret reservoirs, or just reflected a floral addiction. You spit on the thread, twist it vengefully, and stab anew. Midnight gusts nudge your elbow. The poppy's center blurs into a Rorschach smudge. 17th century samurai stitched protective symbols into their underrobes, invisible armor against dishonorable blades. Your embroidered blooms offer no such protection, unless Lord Garmentrinkle's counts as a mortal foe. The needle flicks left to right, mimicking the second hand, gulping down hours. Colonial American schoolgirls practiced with marking samplers, alphabet drills that ballooned into rebellions of unicorns and spiteful mermaids. You outline a leaf, its veins branching like lies told in confessionals. Scissors slice the excess thread. The sound echoes a guillotine's cough. Your thumbnail shines raw from coaxing knots. Archaeologists found a Viking burial cloak embroidered with runes that translate to Icarus was a wuss. The guild would flunk them for improper symbolism, but begrudgingly admired the hustle. 3 petals done, 4 more to hemorrhage onto the fabric. Renaissance embroiderers used silver-gilt thread, so fragile it crumbled at loud noises. Wealth as ephemeral as a hiccup, you settle for cotton floss, its humility softened by the lie of tomorrow's ironing. A yawn hijacks your spine. The needle veers into forbidden territory. The misfit stitch glares a crimson apostrophe, ruining the sentence of your design. Medieval monks once unpicked entire tapestries to atone for uneven satin stitches. A penitence you're too sleep-deprived to entertain. You plunge the needle into a pincushion, its tomato body bristling with earlier failures. The poppy sleeps now, half-formed and dangerous as a loaded die. French courtiers hid love notes in knotted embroidery backs, their silk declarations gummed by centuries of dust. Your own stitches guard nothing but pride, and the certainty that dawn can't fix squint-induced mistakes. The candle drowns in its own wax. You inhale the tannery stink, still clinging to thread. Guild apprentices once rubbed thyme oil on their eyelids to stay alert during night stitches, a remedy that mainly produced bloodshot epiphanies. Your remedy's simpler. A palm pressed to the forehead, counting breaths until the poppies stop throbbing. Wind sneaks through the shutters. The embroidery flutters like a panicked bird. You pin it down with a thimble and the dread of redoing shadow work. 83 stitches per petal, 94 if you count the ones you'll deny tomorrow. Teeth test the thread's strength. A bad habit Margit slapped wrists for. The strand snaps. A tiny tragedy lost in the spit-damp curl of your fist. 16th century brides embroidered their shift vows in metallic thread, gilded promises that tarnished before the honeymoon lint settled. You knot a new length this time without the bitterness. The hearth exhales ash, flecks settle on your work like malevolent snowflakes. Blowing them off would smear the dye, a disaster narrowly avoided by strategic squinting. Mongolian saddle blankets featured wolf fur embroidered into floral patterns, a predator's threat softened by peony camouflage. Your apron lacks such poetry, just a sleepwalker's poppies and the metallic tang of impatience. Twin pricks blossom on your thumb, henned by rebellious needle jabs. You suck the blood away, it tastes of salt and poor life choices. 17 petal tips curl now, each a monument to muscle memory over finesse. The Guild's embroidery manual warned against thread greed, overcrowding stitches until the fabric buckles. You add an 18th tip anyway, rebellion, served lukewarm and lopsided. Dawn licks the windowsill. You snap the thread with a jerk that rattles the scissors. The finished poppy bleeds across the linen, a Rorschach test only half-drunken guild inspectors could love. Byzantine silk queens would faint your ghost hopes they do. The needle rests, tarnished and trembling in its tomato pillow. You press a palm to the embroidery. The poppy's raised veins pulse like a smuggled heartbeat. Historians still argue whether Bayeux tapestry workers left intentional errors as silent protests. Your own flaws require no debate. Cockcrow shatters the room's fragile peace. Your spine uncurls, a parchment scroll snapping back into its tube. The apron crumples to the table, red poppies smirking in the gray light. You drift toward bed, dreaming of scissors that cut time itself, and a world where thread never knots. Your palm rasps against the linen, that rogue snag catching skin like a fishhook bred for pettiness. Archaeologists confirm the Egyptians wove funeral shrouds, this finely 3,000 threads per inch, tighter than a pharaoh's grip on afterlife real estate. You squint, the flaw glows silver under candlelight, a scar in the weave. Split threads curl upward, miniature serpents, hissing good luck with that. 18th century French weavers patched snags with spider silk, harvested at dawn by apprentices hopped on espresso substitutes. You lack arachnid allies, just a steel needle and stubbornness fermented through 6 generations of Guildwomen. The first repair stitch plunges, a surgical strike between warp and weft. Your breath sinks with the tug of thread, in through the nose, out through the needle. Historians still argue whether Roman toga stains were political statements or just wine's eternal indiscretions. Your team spilled Chianti every time. 3 stitches anchor the rebellion, tiny bridges across the fabric canyon. A moth flutters past, its wings dusty with the remains of someone else's curtains. Your grandma claimed snagged linen remembers its plant form, cotton ghosts sighing for red soil and April rains. The apron trembles under your grip, homesick or just drafty. Midnight licks the window pane. You dip the needle in beeswax to strengthen the thread. Mummies wore linen soaked in lotus oil, a burial detail that backfired when grave robbers tracked the stench. Your own aromas simpler, nervous sweat, and the peach jam you globbed on toast at midnight. The repair grows, a raised seam like a fossilized centipede. You press it flat, thumb radiating the same heat used to forge papal signet rings. Renaissance merchants smuggled forbidden lace in hollowed Bibles, their piety perforated by rebellion. Your contraband's subtler, those 2 crooked stitches guild inspectors would call charmingly rustic. Wind riffles through the linen. It billows like a sail on a Nile barge. The whisper arrives spider soft, This thread once swayed in desert winds. You freeze, finger poised mid-stitch. Modern labs can ID textile provenances through pollen grains trapped in fibers. Science catching up to what guildmothers always felt in their knuckles. Another tug. The snag surrenders with a sigh that flutters the candle. Medieval brides wore linen shifts embroidered with nonsense runes, the textile equivalent of crossing fingers. Your needle dances 9 stitches to bind the wound. Mongolian horsemen believed mended cloth housed protective spirits. You hope they packed snacks for this eternity gig. The repaired weave lies smooth, a flat line where chaos thrived. You spit polish the area, an old trick Margit swore by, and immediately regret the damp smear. 17th century samurai burned snagged robes to avoid spiritual contamination, a habit that explains their top-notch embroidery skills under pressure. Linen whispers again, "Mistress wore me," while stacking olive jars in Thebes. You snort, fabric's worst trait is its memoir aspirations. Blunt fingernails trace the warp threads, fingertips decoding 3 millennia-old sunburns baked into the fibers. Experts think Cleopatra's barge sails were double-stitched for extra drama. During Nile parades, your apron's less majestic, but better at hiding jam stains. Dawn pokes through the shutters. The repaired section vanishes into the hole like a secret swallowed. Guild apprentices once staged linen rebellions, sewing hidden messages into nobles' undergarments. Your own subversion's simpler, a flawless mend where failure should have lived. The candlewick drowns its last smoke, curling into hieroglyph shapes above your head. You rub the linen between thumb and forefinger, smooth as the lies you'll tell about staying up all night. That stubborn snag's now a monument to spite stitching, the guild's true foundational skill. Roosters crow as you shake out the apron, its shadows pooling on the floor like spilled ink. The linen stays silent now, its nostalgia trip over, replaced by the smugness of healed wounds. Threads hold memories tighter than any historian's ledger, a truth you sew into every reluctant repair. Your needle whispers against the whetstone, 5 precise strokes to restore its spite. The apron folds itself into the cedar chest, all drama extinguished until tomorrow's disaster. Somewhere beyond the window, a fig tree rustles with the same breeze that once fluttered Theban looms, proving all fabrics just time's fraying skin. Sleep comes with linen-soft hands around your throat. Gently, the thimble clinks against bone, a Morse code conversation with the crickets outside. Blunt needles glint under lamplight's greasy halo, their edges begging slow down like overripe fruit, resisting the stem's pull. You stab linen anyway, thread hissing through the weave like a smuggler through palace gates. 14th century night workers brewed valerian tea to stay awake. Modern historians call it medieval melatonin, but you're powered by spite and yesterday's honey cakes. Twilight creases the room, your scissors yawn open beside a spool of waxed thread. Each stitch glows blue-white under the moon's scrutiny, a color German weavers once called ghost flax. A moth kamikaze dives into your lamp. Its wings leave an eyelash of ash on the fabric. You brush it off. 19th century French nuns would have called that a blessing. Their convents filled with kerchiefs kissed by holy moth dust. Thread snaps. Its recoil stings your cheek like a disgruntled lover's slap. 18th century sailors mended sails with their own hair during storms, a fun fact that's less inspiring when your own split ends mock you from the spool. You rethread, tongue pinched between teeth, as the iron bell tower stutters toward midnight. Linen stretches taut, its warp threads hum with tension. Historians still argue whether Byzantine embroidery floss contained actual gold or just lies spun by merchants. Your needle ducks through the weave 8 passes to anchor a seam that'll outlast your bones. A draft slips under the door. It carries the vinegar tang of dye vats from 3 streets over. Beeswax melts under your thumb, scent unlocking a memory of hives humming in your grandmother's orchard. Tudor nurses rubbed comb wax on teething infants' gums, a placebo stickier than their royal family drama. The thread resists you curse through a smile, and pretend guild inspectors won't notice the wobble in your hem. Your pinky twitches, a phantom ache from yesterday's 7-hour bobbin winding marathon. Renaissance Italians believed needlework cramps were demons trapped in the fingers, exorcised only by soaking hands in rosemary brine. You settle for cracking knuckles. The sound syncs with an owl's hoot outside, and stab the fabric with renewed spite. The apron's waistband curls like a cat's tail mid-swipe. You flatten it with a thimble slap. Medieval Korean seamstresses tucked mugwort leaves into seams to repel moths. Modern science confirms the herb's insecticidal properties. All you've got is a sachet of lavender stolen from your neighbor's wash line. Crimes against the guild's purity codes be damned. Midnight arrives as a yawn that cracks your jaw. The apron's collar puckers like a drunkard's grin. You unpick 4 stitches, sweat blurring the linen's grid lines into aquatic ripples. Gardeners in old Pompeii stitched their own burial shrouds during volcano tremors. A tidbit that feels tragically relatable as your candle sputters. Your needle slips, a crimson bead blooms where pride once lived. Napoleonic soldiers used spider silk to suture wounds you're tempted. But the resident house, spiders owe you rent. Suck the finger, metallic tang mixing with linen dust, and resume sewing. The wound puckers, a minuscule mouth whispering this is why you should have married the candle maker's son. Dawn looms, its first rays rub against the horizon like a cat against a shin. You knot the final stitch with hands numb as winter carrots. Guild apprentices once dunked their hands in snow to reset their fingers, a practice now outlawed by frostbite awareness brochures. The apron droops over the chairback, a headless sentinel guarding your defeat. village legends claim, unfinished sewing climbs into bed, with you its cold threads coiling around dreamers' ankles. You collapse onto folded arms, the linen's scent blurring into sleep's warm static. Somewhere beyond the window, a blacksmith's hammer clangs the hours you'll never reclaim. Each strike a period at the end of a sentence nobody read. Moonlight bleeds through the shutters. You lift the sash to let the chill reboot your fogged brain. The Pleiades glare down, 7 silver needles piercing the firmament's black linen. Ancient Greeks timed harvests by their rise. Tonight their stitches, holding the dark to the sky's hem. Your thimble catches their gleam, a tiny satellite orbiting your calloused ring finger. Thread snaps again, and you groan loud enough to startle the neighbor's mule. 19th century astronomers, wives embroidered star charts with metallic floss, their constellations frayed when husbands borrowed thread for telescope repairs. You knot fresh cotton, tongue poking out like a kid tying skate laces, and resume stabbing fabric. A comet streaks past, or maybe a drunk pigeon. Either way, you make a wish. Let this seam outlive my landlord's grudges. Cold air nips your nape, you pull the shawl tighter, its fringe trembling like a chandelier in a carriage chase. Renaissance painters used real silver leaf for stars. Toxicity explain those dreamy martyr portraits' wide eyes. Needle slips, pricks your thumb's meaty pad. A bead of blood swells dark as Mars in opposition. Medieval surgeons used silk sutures dyed with crushed beetles, a fact that haunts your trash bin, full of crimson-stained rags. Suck the wound, metallic tang mixing with pastry crumbs from dinner's questionable turnover, and keep sewing. Wind riffles your pattern papers. They flutter like ghostly playing cards. Historians still argue whether Egyptian weavers aligned their stitches with Orion's belt or just eyeballed it. You angle the apron toward Saturn's yellow stare, its celestial critique sharp as any guildmaster's. Fingernails brush a knot, your personal Everest of shame, and you unravel it slow as a feud between rival tailors. 3 crows bicker on the roof. Their debate over muffin crumbs mirrors Twitter threads you scroll through at dawn. Victorian dressmakers inserted secret pockets in morning gowns, storage for tears, or smuggled peppermints. Your apron's hidden compartment holds a lemon drop and a caffeine confession. I shouldn't have had that 4th tea. Pleiades climb higher. Their light sharpens your needle's shadow into a sundial's dagger. You cinch the waistband's drawstring, knots triple secured like a pirate queen's treasure chest. 17th century sailors believed aprons stitched under new moon's jinxed voyages. Hence, all those shipwrecked cooks' uniforms in museums. Your spine crackles like kindling decades of hunching, distilled into one ignoble pop. Ottomans padded cushions with unborn lambswool, their guild's secret for surviving 8-hour embroidery sessions. You settle for a sack of dried lentils behind your back. It shifts like a disloyal vertebra. Dawn's first blush creeps in rose gold fingertips, smudging the horizon. Time to move before the baker fires up his oven and ruins your vampiric vibe. Final stitch slides home, a perfect loop echoing the moon's cratered cheek. You bite the thread, cotton's bitter kiss lingers, and slump forward, forehead thudding against the table. The apron glows, moonshine pooled in its folds like liquid platinum. Pompeii's laundresses used volcanic ash as bleach, extreme exfoliation for togas. You'll settle for dawn's meager, raised to hide the uneven hem. A sparrow lands on the sill. It cocks its head, judging your work with beady-eyed menace. Your candle dies, smoke ghosts upward to join the retreating stars. Dead wick mimics your posture. Scorched and slumped, you raise a toast with an empty teacup, saluting the sky's retreating stitchery, and wonder how many needles burn in that cosmic thimble. The candle's corpse still smolders. You fish a beeswax block from your apron's shadowy recesses. Roman soldiers once waterproofed shields with this golden gunk, gives new meaning to armor polish. You snap off a chunk. The fracture sounds like a walnut sacrificed under a boot. Twine leans into the heat, coiling around wax, until it gleams like a snake mid-shed. Dipping becomes liturgy. Wax bubbles spit ancient secrets against your knuckles. A medieval scribe's diary claims rubbing beeswax on your ear silences gossips, though the method for application remains suspiciously vague. Thread slides through the eyelet, now no snags, no drama, just the purr of perfect friction. Your hands move independent of thought. Dip, twist, pull, repeat. Viking longships may have used waxed ropes to outrun storms. Historians still argue whether that's fact or scalds, drunken boasts. The rhythm syncs with your pulse, each tug mirroring a heartbeat's stubborn resolve. Midnight oil. Try midnight beeswax, a scent that clings to your hair like a possessive lover. You snort at the guild's rulebook. Awkward stitches betray doubt. Waxed threads crush hesitation. Tell that to your blistered fingertips. A moth dive bombs the workspace. Wings fan your cheek in a flirtation that'll end poorly for both of you. 18th century court dresses hid waxed ribbons in hems, emergency kindling for eloping ladies trapped in drafty carriages. You swat at the insect, it pirouettes away, trailing a dusting of wing-scale confetti. The spool shrinks, transformed from plump promise to a skeletal spindle. Renaissance surgeons waxed sutures to minimize scarring, a mercy for duelists and clumsy pastry chefs alike. You pause, thumb testing the thread's newfound silkiness. Memory overrides muscle as you fumble the next dip. Wax cascades over your wrist like accidental jewelry. 3 drips solidify on the table, tiny amber domes perfect for hypothetical fairy wars. Ottoman weavers allegedly rolled wax balls to calm ADD-riddled apprentices. Early fidget toys lost to time. You pocket one, maybe it'll mute tomorrow's interminable guild meeting. Wind sneaks through a wall crack. It flirts with the cooling wax, sculpting ripples only a microscope would applaud. A yawn hijacks your jaw, that deep, soul-rattling breed reserved for parents of newborns and night shift assassins. Dawn's still a rumor. The horizon clings to its star-studded nightgown. Your needle, now waxed to arrogance, slices through layers like a noblewoman through commoners. The final eyelet gapes, hungry for its glossy serpent. In the Balkans, brides once sewed wax-coated buttons to repel the evil eye effectiveness disputed. But the bridesmaids' migraines were legendary. Thread stiffens as it cools. Each pass through fabric leaves a phantom hum. You abandon the thimble. Let the needle bite your skin. Pain keeps you present, anchored in a sea of repetitive motion. Wax crusts under your nails, organic glitter for the chronically crafty. Swedish researchers recently discovered 6,000-year-old waxed cordage in a peat bog still flexible enough to tie a decent slipknot. You file this under reasons to respect ancestors, next to didn't whine about Wi-Fi. Sweat carves a path down your temple. It hesitates at your jawline, reconsidering life choices. The Guildhall clock tolls a half-hour that feels both too soon and centuries late. Moonlight retreats. Its exit cues the candle's resurgence. You strike a fresh taper. Flame licks wax as the cycle begins anew. Thread snaps. Of course it snaps. You grumble a sailor's curse, softened for polite company. Elizabethan seamstresses allegedly invented 9 new expletives per buttonhole, redipping the frayed end. You pretend patience is a virtue and not a survival tactic. The apron's straps emerge, waxed cords coiled like resting vipers. A final knot swells at the base, plump, symmetrical, worthy of a museum label. Pompeii's brothel ledgers list waxed thread sails. Historians still argue whether it was for lingerie or accounting scrolls. When the last loop tightens, your hands convulse, phantom motions echoing the night's labor. The wax block resembles a chewed moon now, pockmarked and diminished. You shove it aside. It skitters across the table, fleeing your expectations like everything else. Beeswax coats your world. The smell stains the air. The threads, the leftover scone you shouldn't eat, but do. 8 hours dissolve into the candle's waxen drip times, corpse melting down to fuel a perfectionist's obsession. Dawn arrives, shrugs, and starts painting the room in loser's gold. The apron hangs finished stiff with wax and whispered incantations. Its straps glisten, earthbound constellations in a sky of homespun linen. The crossed blades glint, a steel X guarding the apron's hemline. Dawn crawls across their edges, splitting into twin rivers of honeyed light. 16th century shears like these weighed as much as a newborn, designed to humble arrogant apprentices. You heft them anyway, palms savoring the chill bite of iron. Guild rules decree fresh linen beneath the blades. Every snip leaves ghosts in the cloth. You layer scrap fabric under the hem, a sacrificial offering to the shears. Appetite, Roman metalworkers perfected the hinge design. While shearing sheep, wool funded empires long before looms did. The left blade kisses the right. Their metallic shink echoes through dewy air. Your first cut hesitates. Threads part like lovers forced to release clasped hands. Medieval midwives hid scissors under birthing beds. Superstition claimed they could cut labor pains. You snort. These blades feel more likely to cause agony than cure it. Cotton surrenders in clean lines, no jagged edges, no rebellions. Historians still argue whether guilds dulled shears for ritual purposes or just resented, replacing costly steel. The severed threads quiver, microscopic souls fleeing your merciless geometry. A slip here would unravel hours. Your thumbnail whitens against the lower handle. Bourbon kings once dueled with ornamental shears. Their duelists died from infection, not blade wounds. You adjust your grip, fingers finding grooves polished smooth by dead women's calluses. 3 strokes, that's all the hem requires. 3 strokes, and a lifetime of guild judgment. The second cut sings, a high C that prickles your molars. Ottoman tailors believed singing scissors attracted jinn. You mutter a charm anyway. Blades be brisk, thread be felled. No blood spilled unless deserved. Dust motes swarm the sunbeam. Your final snip bisects their chaos. French revolutionaries melted shears into pistols. Another reason Marie Antoinette's wardrobe lacked tidy hems. The apron's edge lies flawless, a cliff of linen overhanging the table's dark wood. You uncross the blades, their separation feels like unlocking a vault. Renaissance etiquette manuals forbade handing open scissors, an invitation to violent thoughts. They rest apart now, parallel soldiers dismissed from formation. Waxed thread trims scatter the table fossils of last night's obsession. You sweep them into a tin, their clatter mimics far-off hail. 17th century Dutch portraits hid scissors in women's hands, subtle blasphemy against church decrees about idle fingers. The guildmother's warning loops in your skull. Rush the cut, and you hemorrhage respect. Your palms sweat, iron oxide tinge blooming on the handles. One stray drop falls, rust sizzles into the linen like a tiny curse. Noon bells toll, you startle, shears slipping to graze your wrist. Pain blooms, a crimson bead swells where blade met skin. Prussian field medics stitched wounds with hair dipped in wax. You settle for sucking the sting away. Blood etches a faint constellation on the apron's waistband, another intentional flaw for your growing collection. You fold the garment with military precision, edges aligned, straps tucked, rebellion smothered. The shears watch silent witnesses to your surrender. You sheath them in doeskin, humming a lullaby even tools deserve. Spanish nuns once buried old scissors in sanctified ground, a ritual for blades that died loyal. Sunlight retreats. The table bears only ghostly threads and the metallic tang of resolve. Guild apprentices will whisper about this apron's edges for decades, razor straight, ruthless, echoing the click of crossed steel in first light. Moonlight gnaws at the folded apron, its pressed edges too perfect, too still. You unpin the waistband, fingertips catch on a ragged void where stitches surrendered. The tear hides beneath the hem's crisp veneer, a betrayal woven into linen's innocence. Victorian servants darned stockings with daylight, thread color matched to shadows in their attics. You cradle the frayed edges, your needle's eye winks like a conspirator. Sailors once mended sails with their lover's hair. Those ghost strands still hum in Atlantic gales. Waxed thread resists your first poke, it curls, mocking your urgency. Thread the needle, miss thread again. Historians still argue whether 18th century seamstresses encoded messages in stitch patterns, tattletale loops reporting their master's treason. You pierce linen with surgical spite, over under over, building a bridge across the rift. Each knot draws blood ooze into the fibers, rust and vermilion blooming like anti-embroidery. Persian rug repairers left deliberate flaws, their version of appeasing perfection-craving demons. You copy their defiance, knotting a scarlet cipher into the hem. Midnight creaks, the house's bones shift. Your thimble taps Morse code on the table. Not done yet. Tudor menders added lavender to ward off stitch-induced madness. You settle for wine-sour breath and gritted teeth. Reverse the weave. Hide the crime. The mended tear stiffens, a scar telling better lies than the surrounding fabric. One thread loops rebelliously. You stab it down, a dictator silencing dissent. Dawn licks the windows. Your needle's last plunge anchors the lie. The apron lies pristine, its secrets folded thrice, buried under lavender sachets. Some flaws aren't accidents, just heirlooms in waiting. Leather whispers against your hips. The apron straps cling like jealous lovers. You cinch the left side first, aged hide protesting through each notch. Remember Master Ewan's graveled lesson. Tighten west to east, sun's path steadies the hands. His blind fingers taught 10 apprentices that not only 3 survived the fever winter. The right buckle resists your thumb, finds the groove worn smooth by predecessors. Historians cataloged 47 leather curring methods in medieval Cordoba. None mention the secret ingredient. You suspect donkey urine made the cut. Twilight stains the workshop, straps darken to match the ache behind your eyes. One tug too fierce, the leather snaps taut, stealing your breath. 17th century stays left women bruised, but upright you're grateful for hemp corsetries, kinder cruelty. A chuckle escapes. Imagine guild matrons fainting at your modern irreverence. Not the ends now. Loop undercross twice, pull through. Master Ewan's twilight knot resembles an owl's talons mid-strike. Archaeologists found similar fastenings on Byzantine saddles. Debate rages whether traders or termites spread the design. You double-check the tension. Strap ends curl like sleeping vipers. Leftover lace bites your wrist. You unwind it with teeth and spite. Oil sachets burst between your fingers. Lanolin's wet dog, scent floods the room. Tudor tanners rubbed brains into hides for softness, a fact best forgotten while handling midnight snacks. Twist the final loop, no, this loop. The knot defies logic, geometry's practical joke. Your thumbnail splits, a blood bead pearls where pride outran skill. Swiss mercenaries reportedly sewed wounds with leather thread. You dab the red bloom on the apron's hem. Rain drums the roof, straps expand in the damp. Adjust again. Again, apprenticeship contracts required swearing on a braided strap, allegiance sealed by oily fingerprints. You hum a tavern song, Ewan's ghost would grumble about disrespect. 3 tugs to test security. The apron hugs your ribs, not smothering, not slack. Ragged breath fogs the workshop mirror. Your reflection wears centuries of women's labor like ancestral armor. Historians still argue whether guilds hid maps in waistband linings. You finger the inner seam, only loose threads answer. Dye leaks onto your stomach. Indigo streaks become twin rivers on parchment skin. Midnight's bell drowns in rain. You tie off the last loop, a half-hitch copied from a smuggler's journal. Master Ewan's voice rasps in memory. Knots outlive kings, girl. Choose your twists wisely. The apron settles its weight familiar as a tired argument. You blow out the candle. Darkness tastes of wet leather and the ghosts of blind old men. Firelight gilds the apron's hem as coals sigh, their orange eyes dimming by the breath. You edge the stool closer, its wobbly leg etching scars in the clay floor. 17th century seamstresses bribed chimney sweeps for soot-blackened needles. Rust hid stitches from prying eyes. Your own needle winks, dull bronze smeared with ash from the dying hearth. Shadows finger your work, pleats yawn like starving mouths. You jab the needle anyway. Linen resists, fibers cling like villagers hoarding last year's grain. A stitch snags. Blink, squint. Thread trembles as you wrestle it straight. Embers pop, a spark flees toward the rafters. Historians still argue whether guild mistresses encoded messages in firelit stitches. You snort. Tonight's only cipher is thread this percentage. Needle before I scream. Coals shift, their glow narrows to a blade's edge. Your thimble taps Morse code on the iron-scarred table. Master Ewan's voice rasps through memory. Steady hands steal fire's last breath for their art. Too bad he never mentioned cinders in your lap. The needle dives, pierces fabric with a grudging whisper. 1 pleat secured. 2. Your spine knots itself. Too many hours hunched like a scribe's comma. Archivists recently found a Saxon loom weight etched with Odin hates, uneven hems. You believe it. Midnight wind shoulders through cracks. The fire shrinks further. Your candle stump weeps wax onto last week's bread crust. Should traded for tallow instead of that mermaid's hair silk thread. The coals hiss, either a draft or judgment. Thread snaps. You nearly stab your palm. Dark age reenactors claim saliva strengthens linen fibers. You coat the strand anyway, taste of dust and sheep. The needle slides through, smooth as a liar's promise. 3 pleats rise, disciplined soldiers in a fabric army. You smooth them down, calluses catching on every ridge. A coal cracks open, reveals a honeycomb heart, glowing like the abbey's stained glass. It crumbles before you can name the saint. Wind dies. Embers whisper secrets. Your needle slows, tracing paths between fire-flecked threads. Someone hung garlic above the loom to ward off moths or inquisitive guild auditors. Either way, it reeks. The last pleat demands attention, straight as a nun's spine. You anchor it with a stitch only spiders would applaud. Coals sigh approval, their light licks the apron's edge once more. Breath held, you snap the thread with your teeth. Firelight gutters, shadows rush in to claim the room. Somewhere an owl screeches. You grin. Let tomorrow's sun critique your work. Tonight's battle is won. Palm down, you press heat into crumpled creases. The iron's hiss harmonizes with night birds beyond the shutters. Your wrist twists, steam rises like phantom lace. 13th century laundresses used glass smoothers heated in ember beds, glowing orbs to banish wrinkles. You're just glad no one expects you to juggle molten spheres tonight. The apron lies docile, its rebellious pleats finally tamed. You swipe the iron along a stubborn ridge. Linen submits with a hiss. Historians still argue whether smoothing cloth was women's work or alchemy disguised as chores. The only alchemy here is turning elbow grease into something wearable. A moth dive bombs the lantern. Its shadow waltzes across your work. Night air slips through the shutters, carries the tang of distant forges. 16th century Dutch widows supposedly pressed funeral shrouds clockwise to confuse grieving spirits. Your own circles veer drunkenly, exhaustion steering the iron's path. The board creaks. A splinter snags your sleeve. You mutter curses absorbed by the wool-stuffed walls. An Oxford Don once wrote 3 volumes on medieval pressing cloths. He never mentioned how sweat makes your grip slip. Cool iron meets damp linen. The sizzle startles a sleeping cat beneath the table. It glares, amber eyes judging your life choices. You toss a thread scrap, watch the beast pounce, entertainment secured. Heat bleeds from the metal, your palm tingles through the padded glove. Guild apprentices dreaded linen bombing, sneaking wrinkled sheets into rivals' work piles. The punishment involved frog spawn and a hogshead of regret. One last fold you bear down like a bishop blessing a heretic. The crease sharpens, approving whispers rise from the iron's breath. Some claim blacksmiths quenched laundry irons in holy water. Tonight, you'd settle for not burning the house down. Midnight slinks closer. The iron's weight numbs your arm. A nightjar's churring weaves through the hiss, nature's own pressing song. You imagine guild mistresses nodding, their aprons crisp as parchment in the afterlife. The apron stiffens, a parchment-dry monument to persistence. You drape it over the loom, sleeves outstretched like a martyr awaiting ascension. Tomorrow it'll soften with wear. Tonight It's armor against the dark's soft accusations. Fatigue pools at your temples. Lantern light blurs into halos. Your thumb finds the iron's cool cheek. Two old companions wordlessly conceding defeat. Sleep lurks in the corners, but the night birds still sing. You let them harmonize your stumbling steps toward the unmade bed. Your palm slaps the bedside table. The dream's loom dissolves into splinters of dawn. That damn village bell, its iron tongue counting hours you'd rather ignore. The unfinished apron mocks from its perch, sleeves dangling like a hanged man's arms. You fumble for the chalk. It rolls into yesterday's teacup. Byzantine silk gilds, embroidered phoenixes on masterwork robes, status symbols dipped in myth. Yours starts as a wobbly sparrow, third attempt births, wings spanning shoulder to hip, chalk dust snowing onto the floor. Sapphire thread glints in its tin. 17th century dyers bankrupted families for this shade. Your needle flashes, each stitch a tiny theft from royalty. Historians still argue whether guild symbols protected wearers or just made nobles open their purses. The answer's in your calluses. A knot forms. You curse through clenched teeth. Needle traders once buried rusty ones in churchyards. Superstition says it stops stitches from unraveling. You'll need a shovel and a prayer after tonight. Midnight laps at the window. Your thimble taps Morse code of exhaustion. The phoenix's tail, feathers coil, each barbule consuming minutes you'll never reclaim. 17 shades of blue swim in your vision. Someone's selling saffron cakes. Outside, your stomach growls a protest. Thread snaps. You fumble the replacement. 15 guild masters could embroidered this blindfolded. Their skeletons are probably still judging you. The needle stabs your thumb. A blood bead swells. You suck it away. Sapphire meets crimson in a secret pact. Strands cluster where the breastbone would be, a nest for secrets. Each feather's spine follows Fibonacci's spiral golden ratio, hidden in plain linen. Pythagoras would have loved textile math if he could have threaded a needle. Dawn's first blade slices the shutters. Your candlewick drowns in wax. The bell tolls again, each strike vibrating through the floorboards. You bite the final thread. A sapphire phoenix takes flight across homespun. Sleep needs your temples. The bed whispers lies about rest. One truth remains: tomorrow's merchants will haggle over linen while missing the constellations in its weave. The bell falls silent. Your needle hits the floor with a verdict. The skein lies coiled on the workbench, a serpent of twisted linen. Its loops sneer at your sleep-raw eyes. You reach, the threads writhe like a nest of startled vipers. Medieval herbalists swore by mint-infused steam to sharpen focus. You dunk a sachet into your tea. Bitter chlorophyll ghosts rise, your lungs fill with ancient apothecary wisdom. 5 attempts to find the end fail. The knot tightens its riddle. 17th century sailors believed unraveling tangled rigging foretold storms. Their wives adapted the superstition for thread. You have half expect thunder as the strands snarl deeper. A thorn pricks your thumb, the skein's revenge for yesterday's haste. Mint heat soothes your temples, you press the soggy leaves to pulse points. Guild archives hint at coded messages knotted into mourning veils. Was this skein a diary? Historians still argue whether neophyte weavers sabotaged their own thread to practice repairs. Your calluses vote yes. You attempt the widow's gambit. Hook two pinkies under opposing loops, the method named for a Lyon silk widow who unwove her husband's debts, stitch by stitch. Instead of liberation, a new knot births itself. Your groan sinks with the hearth's dying crackle. Dawn licks the window. It mocks your all-night vigil. 3 firefly embers cling to the poker's tip. You stab them into charcoal surrender. The motion reminds you. Flax farmers once danced clockwise around flames to bless their harvest. You rotate the skein instead. A glint emerges, amber resin fused to a strand. Egyptian spinners used pine sap to strengthen thread. This must be a relic of that trade. Your scissors hesitate. Who are you to sever 30 centuries of tradition? The resin snaps first. Its fracture smells of forgotten forests. The freed thread unspools like a repentant river. You follow its current, past yesterday's rushed stitches, past the prideful tug that started this mess. Chelsea textile arsonists burned knot-ridden fabrics in 1723. A cautionary tale roasted into your memory. Your thumb traces a Mendied split, proof that patience outlasts perfection. Twilight threads the needles. You weave the salvaged strand into the apron's hidden hem. Guild apprentices once hid lockets of lovers' hair. There, your secret is simpler. A single drop of resin stays embedded, a golden flaw for tomorrow's fingers to discover. Lamb's wool blooms across your work table, clouds sheared from spring's first shearing. You card the fibers, resisting the urge to sneeze at their dusty sweetness. 17th century stays used thistledown for padding. Aristocrats prized its itch-free embrace over peasant wool. Your fingers disagree. This fleece is combed softer than a banker's conscience. Layers build like cumulus, each tuft pressed crosswise to its predecessor. A Carpathian folk tale claims sheep grazing under eclipses grow wool that repels needles. The current pricking your thumb suggests these lambs bathed in ordinary moonlight. You suck the blood bead away. Crimson speckles the cloud bank. Thermopylae reenactors swear linen gambesons stuffed with thistle outperformed Spartan bronze. You mimic their tight quilting pattern, hexagonal stitches devouring fluff. The needle balks, caught on a guard hair coiled like a revolt. Historians still argue whether Persian arrows feared Mediterranean thistles more than Spartan spears. Padding puffs into a breastplate of dreams. Your seams vanish under disciplined rows. A 1903 Parisian scandal erupted when anarchists sewed lice-infested wool into police uniform linings. Your work remains mercifully parasite-free, though static makes strands levitate like vengeful ghosts. Even stitches mimic the guild's sacred spiral, each twist a defiance of straight lines. You bury knots between layers where only moles or melancholy might find them. Mongolian horsemen lined saddles with yak undercoat. Their comfort threshold shames your pampered palms. The iron's hiss plates woolen discipline into place. Steam rises, scented with lanolin and last week's mutton stew. Bavarian nuns once embroidered scripture into vest linings, God reading their work from the inside out. Your hidden message is simpler, a peppermint stem tucked where the heart would sit. Midnight wind riffles the down. You catch a filament of fleece on your tongue. Spitting it out tastes like lost hours and lullabies. The final stitch cinches shut, a woolen lung expanding against the apron's spine. Sleep blurs the room, but your hands keep moving. They stroke the padding's cheek, soft as a lie, resilient as denial. Somewhere beneath the loft and labor, tomorrow's comfort takes root. Twilight licks the mirror's edge, your reflection wavers like a guilty secret. The bronze disc cost 6 months' wages, Venetian glass being reserved for merchants and martyrs. You tilt it, catching the apron's nape where shadows congregate. Every flaw glints, crooked stitches smirk, uneven gathers leer. A Tudor bride once sewed pearls into her hem to blind critical in-laws. Your weapons are simpler, a bone awl, and thread spun from nettles. The mirror's handle bites your palm, its rosewood carved with forgotten anti-witch sigils. Medieval peasants feared polished bronze could steal your breath if gazed upon too long. You risk it, leaning close enough to count each rebellious fiber. Ply-split braiding mocks you, its tension, uneven as a drunkard's gait. Your needle dives, a vengeful minnow chasing imperfections. Renaissance tailors hid mistakes under embroidered emblems, a practice called the humility patch. Yours will be invisible, buried, where only a lover's brush might discover it. Steam rises from the tea bowl beside you, chamomile and regret. The liquid trembles, mirroring the waver in your grip. Historians still argue whether 14th century Flemish mirror makers encoded heresies in their engravings. Your own engraving, a crude sunflower, offers no such intrigue. You wipe fog from the bronze, its surface colder than a banker's apology. 3 pins gleam in your mouth, their tips drawing blood on your tongue. A 1920s Chicago seamstress supposedly poisoned rivals with arsenic-coated needles. You spit them out, metallic tang mixing with the tea's floral sigh. The apron's spine demands perfection, each stitch a soldier in linen armor. Moths batter the lantern, their shadows splicing your reflection into splintered selves. You hum the guild's forbidden lullaby, the one about a weaver who married the north wind. Mississippi Delta quilters sang it sideways to ward off floodwaters. Your off-key rendition wards off nothing, not even the dawn's approaching sneeze. Silk thread glides through the eyelet, a burgundy worm devouring its own tail. Persian rug makers left intent intentional errors to honor God's perfection. You're no theologian, just a woman erasing evidence of sleepless nights. The final knot cinches, a tiny Buddha belly of satisfaction. The mirror fogs again, this time from your exhausted exhale. You trace a heart in the condensation. It bleeds downward into abstraction. Victorian maids polished mirrors with whiskey to repel moral smudges. Yours could use a bath in the whole damn barrel. Daybreak cracks the horizon, a blade splitting dark from darker. The apron hangs limp, its flaws now camouflaged as character. You blow out the candle, smoke curls into a question mark above the mirror. Your reflection blinks last, a reluctant witness to the night's surrender. Midnight's shadow gnaws at the workshop's edges. Your needle moves without permission. The final seam yawns, a linen chasm daring you to bridge it. 17th century mantua makers worked by rushlight, their clientele too impatient for daylight's honesty. Your candle weeps wax veins down its own spine, time running thicker than loom syrup. Bone thimble clicks against brass. Your heartbeat sinks to the sound. Some Ottoman embroiderers swore their needles grew warmer near stolen relics. Your tools remain cold, save for the ache in your third knuckle. Historians still argue whether Byzantine nuns wove prayers into imperial vestments or just curses. You're weaving neither, just the stubborn hope of finishing before cockcrow. A knot forms, your breath stills as you tease it apart. Few no medieval cobblers used dried eel skins for thread, fortunes wasted on footwear. The fiber relents, slipping into place like a chastened child. Across the room, your bed glowers, its unmade sheets a kingdom unconquered. Thread pulls taut, each loop mirroring your carotid's stubborn rhythm. Tudor seamstresses hid lovers' notes in quilt batting, crushed lavender betraying their scent. Your own secrets stay buried, a misaligned pleat here, a doubled stitch there. The guild's bronze bell tolls once, vibrations skittering up your blade-straight spine. One earlobe throbs. You've been clenching the needle between teeth again. Renaissance lace makers went blind by 30, paid in vinegar and whispers. Your eyes sting, the price of counting linen's cross-hatched shadows past reason. The apron shifts, its weight now gravid with near completion. Fingers cramp. You shake them like ink-stained clerks at dawn. VICTORIAN, Chinese letter workers sneaked hair into coats as silent protests against wages. A gray strand glints in your hem, a rebellion no one will witness. Midnight oil's stench clings, smoke tendrils mimic your hair's unraveling braid. Dutch tailors burned rosemary to repel moths and malevolent stitch critics. Your own critics sleep, unless you count the mice in the walls. The needle dips, its arc precise as a composer's final notation. Silk whispers through linen, a sound smoother than confession. Aztec weavers spun feathers into God's robes, each plume a sung promise. You spin only practicality, yet the thread hums its own small hymn. A drop of blood blooms, your thumb's rebellion against perfection. Napoleonic soldiers famously mended uniforms with horsehair, pricking themselves to stay awake. You suck the iron tang, metallic and ancestral. The stain disappears beneath an overlap, craftswomanship as alchemy. The last knot, you tie it 7 times, though tradition demands 3. Some say 7th century Persians measured loyalty by the complexity of their knots. Your loyalty's simpler to the ghost of guilds past crowding your periphery. Threads, severed, scissors sing their shrill ode to doneness. The apron collapses, suddenly ordinary, suddenly holy. Your pulse thrums where the needle once danced, a tattoo of absence. Candlelight gutter dives, the room shrinks into charcoal smudges. You rise, joints popping like a bard's lyre, falling downstairs. The completed apron drapes across your chair, a shadow with substance. Wind licks the shutters, carrying the acidic tang of tanneries 3 streets over. A loose thread sways, you resist the urge to trim it. Historians never mention how completion feels like both victory and funeral. Floorboards creak, you pivot, half expecting a guildmother's approving nod. Only moonlight greets you, an argent puddle lapping at your boots. The workshop exhales its breath laced with beeswax and unresolved silence. Palms flat on the table, you lean into the ache. 18th century Japanese suists revered calluses as the body's true thimbles. Yours glow faintly, mapped constellations of labor. A moth lands on the apron's bib, wings fanning indigo dust. You let it rest, one night worker acknowledging another. Somewhere, a rooster hoards its voice, dawn patient as a creditor. The final stitch cools its heat, leaching into the air like forgiveness. The lanolin tin opens with a suck. Its earthy musk clouds the room. You scoop a viscous glob, sheep's own sweat transformed into salvation. 19th century Welsh shepherds swore by lanolin for waterproofing cloaks, though their records smell suspiciously of marketing ledgers. Your thumb works the grease into linen. Fibers drink it like parched pilgrims. Fat glistens across the aprons, bib your fingerprints smear into temporary constellations. Roman soldiers allegedly rubbed lanolin on their feet to prevent trench foot, a lie told to recruits. Perhaps the cloth darkens, its stains now dignified as moisture retention. One stubborn patch resists, you attack it with the heel of your hand. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age Persians used lanolin for armor polish or contraceptive paste. The answer matters less than this friction, your palm warming, waxed threads back to pliability. Shadows stretch their legs, your silhouette mangles itself against the far wall. A draft sneaks under the door, lanolin's scent turns medicinal, almost bitter. You remember Egyptian embalmers using similar fats, their linen wraps stiffened by sacred arrogance. Knuckles cramp, the tin slips, leaving a grease streak on your sleeve. Medieval illuminators mixed lanolin with pigment to prevent cracked vellum, another use they stole from textile workers. You press the stain into the fabric, a hidden trophy from the war against dryness. The apron's waistband sags. You knead it like dough needing redemption. 18th century French seamstresses smuggled messages in lanolin-sealed seams, the waxen plugs melting under candlelight interrogation. Your own secrets stay mundane. How many times you've rethreaded the needle, how little you've slept. Firelight dies. The coals leave orange parentheses in the hearth. You rub residual grease into your cuticles, an unguent for invisible wounds. Some claim Victorian surgeons stole lanolin from tailoring houses for wound salve. History's eternal scavenger hunt. A moth kamikaze dives into the tin. You fish it out, wings glued shut. Its frantic beats paint oil rainbows on your wrist. You lay it on the windowsill, a tiny martyr to curiosity. The apron hangs heavy now, lanolin's ghost weight, multiplying its mass. Your palms leave streaks on the table, a crime scene of good intentions. One fingerprint resembles Toulouse, though you'll never admit to seeing maps in debris. Cold creeps up your calves. The workshop's stone floor exacts its toll. You consider the Roman rumor, whether legionaries really anointed their feet before battle. Maybe they just liked the way it made their sandals shine. Final inspection. The fabric flexes without creaking. A supple beast tamed. Your hands stink of pastoral sacrifice. Lanolin's aroma now fused with your skin. A loose thread clings to your thumb. You let it ride. A hitchhiker from the fray. Moonlight slinks through shutters. The apron drinks it differently now, oiled and eager. You think of Viking sails soaked in mutton fat, how they glistened like dark waves. Your creation shares that hunger, ready to swallow wind, sweat, the acid teeth of time. The tin clatters shut, its metallic gasp echoing in the hollowed night. You press greased palms to your face, a comedian's mock surrender. Somewhere, a ewe rubs against a fence post, its fleece already brewing next year's salvation. Wind tests the shutters. Drafts carry the adipose perfume down to the river. Fishermen will wake puzzled, sniffing air that smells of workshop and womb. You lean against the doorframe, lanolin's residue gluing your sleeve to the wood. Dawn lingers, an uninvited guest checking its pocket watch. The apron sways on its peg, a figurehead for ships that sail only in attics. You blow out the last candle, its smoke braiding with the scent of wet wool. The apron clings as you slip it over your head linen, whispering against your shift like a conspirator. Straps bite your shoulders, a familiar ache earned through 3 nights' labor. Renaissance guilds demanded aprons, dyed specific colors. To denote trade, your indigo. Homage would have made a Florentine dyer nod. Rain drums the roof's tin in Morse code, each drop hissing dun dun dun. You flatten the bib palm, brushing the guild's sapphire phoenix, rising from hem to hip. 17th century Dutch painters hid self-portraits in apron folds. Van Gogh's potato harvesters probably pocketed more turnips than glory. Your thumb finds the reinforced pocket seam still empty, still pregnant with possibility. A gust howls through the chimney, embers scatter like fleeing spies. The apron's waist, cinch, grips your ribs, a constrictor's embrace taught by Master Ewan's trembling hands. Some claim Victorian cooks sewed hair into their aprons to ward off jealous spirits. You glance at the floor, half expecting to find your own strands writhing. Rainwater bleeds under the door, a sly river creeping toward your boots. You lift the hem, threads drink the moisture without darkening. Historians still argue whether Navajo weavers inspired medieval apron designs, or vice versa. The answer drowns in academia's teacup. Your reflection wavers in the blackened window, a smudged figure crowned by lopsided braids. 14th century French laws fined bakers whose aprons lacked proper flour stains, proof of honest labor. You rub a thumb through the indigo dye, smearing a comet across your thigh. The left strap slips. You yank it higher, knuckles grazing your collarbone. Nuns in the Brecon beacons once stitched psalm verses into apron linings, their needles moving to the rhythm of Veni Creator Spiritus. A moth kamikaze dives into your lantern. Its shadow flickers across the phoenix, animating the beast. You pivot. The apron flares like a bell tolling midnight. Raindakes tattoo your nape. One slides under the collar, cold as a leech. 18th century sailors wore tarred aprons during storms, their sticky shields against Poseidon's spit. Fabric tugs at your knees. You hike the hem, exposing ankles to the drizzle's bite. A roasted chestnut vendor in Naples once won a lawsuit using his burnt apron as evidence. Charred patches proved his overtime. Your own stains lack such eloquence, sweat and beeswax, the hieroglyphs of exhaustion. The guild's medallion sewn inside the pocket pricks your hip, a bronze circle stamped with crossed needles. Scholars debate whether Romany travelers introduced hidden compartments to European aprons. The truth hides in unspoken trades between campfires. You crouch to relight the hearth, the apron bunches like a lover's fist. 17 pleats dig into your stomach, one for each year you've served the guild. A drop of condensation plummets from the ceiling, lands on the phoenix's eye, mimicking a tear. Steam rises as fire licks damp wood. The apron's waistband contracts further. Tudor scullions bribed inspectors with honey cakes sewn into their hems, sweetness trumping sanitation. You inhale lanolin and wood smoke, the musk of finished labor. Thunder growls. The tin roof answers with a metallic scream. Your hands fist the apron's sides, fabric strained like a ship's sail in a hurricane. Lightning stutters for one heartbeat. The phoenix's wings seem to beat. Rain pools around your soles. You wade toward the window. Cobblestones gleam like eel scales in the storm's bruise light. Ottoman coffee servers dipped their aprons in rosewater to scent each cup, a flourish you'd mock if it didn't sound divine. The left pocket sags. You press it flat, sealing secrets you'll never confess. A seamstress in Dresden survived a cannon blast by hiding in her apron's folds. Or so her granddaughter's memoir claims. Wind slaps the shutters. The left hinge surrenders with a groan. You fumble for the sash, apron flaring as you lunge. Rain soaks your sleeves. The phoenix bleeds indigo onto your shift. Coins clink in the far pocket. Emergency funds for midnight oil or mulled wine. Archaeologists found a Viking apron weighed down with Arabic silver proof of trade routes stitched in linen. Thunder retreats. The storm leaves behind a soaked world and your rattling bones. You peel off the apron. Its absence feels like losing a limb. Steam curls from the hearth where damp fabric sizzles. Moonlight pierces the clouds. Your creation lies crumpled, glowing like forged steel. A Buenos Aires tango dancer once sewed blades into her apron hem, foxtrotting vengeance for cheating partners. You spread the garment on the table, palms smoothing phantom wrinkles. Dawn licks the horizon, its pink tongue erasing stars. Guild apprentices in Lyon were buried in their aprons, thread and bone, intertwining underground. The last ember dies. You touch the phoenix one final time. Its embroidered claws grip your heartbeat, refusing release. Somewhere beyond the rain, a rooster screeches, the apron's true completion ceremony. Floorboards creak as you shuffle toward the cot, each step shedding needles, threads, the ghost of a thimble. The apron watches from the table, a sentinel learning your sleep rhythms. Rain resumes, gentle now, a lullaby for the indigo beast guarding your dreams. Your fingertip throbs, a crimson bead wells where the needle rebelled. You jerk your hand back, the bronze dart still quivering in half-stitched linen. Sucking the wound tastes of copper and shame, your third mishap tonight. Blood seeps through the thread, blooming like a poppy in snow. Tomorrow you'll call it intentional, a guildwoman's ruse to humble proud cloth. Historians still argue whether Tudor seamstresses used menstrual blood to dye mourning veils. The ledgers stay silent. Rain drums the window. Each drop mocks your stinging finger. You press the linen flat, the stain now a blurred asterisk. In 12th century Normandy, a single blood spot could condemn an entire bolt as cursed. Your guild medallion warms against your chest, its crossed needles judging the flaw. A Moldovan folktale claims pricked fingers. Let fate's threads bind maker to garment. The apron's waistband digs deeper, 17 pleats echoing the years you've served. You dab beeswax on the stain. It glistens like a forbidden jewel. 19th century mills docked workers pay for defaced fabric. Their protests dyed the Thames red with madder roots. The needle winks in lamplight, its eye daring you to continue. One more stitch. The blood becomes part of the pattern, a scarlet covenant. Guildmothers whispered that every apron needs a hidden error to avert the evil eye. You knot the thread, your thimble clatters like a drunken acolyte's chalice. Archaeologists found Elizabethan smocks riddled with bloodstains. Was it haste or a language of pain? Your hands tremble less now, the rouge blemish already fading to rust. Dawn creeps through shutters. The apron lies completed, imperfect, and wholly yours. The cedar chest exhales camphor and regret, its hinges creaking like an elder's knees. You smooth the apron's indigo folds, still warm from hours, against your thighs. Lavender sachets tumble from the shelf, their purple buds crunching under your palm. Historians tally 12 spices in medieval linen storage, but none mention the sting of surrender. A 14th century merchant will left his wife 3 chests, and the dreams therein, the guild still deciphers his code. Moths flutter near the rafters, their wing beats scribbling secrets in the candle's dying light. You tuck poppy seeds between linen layers. Folklore claims they guard against prying fingers. The lid descends, wood meeting wood with the finality of a gavel strike. Sleep tugs your eyelids, shoulders nodding, as you shuffle toward the pallet. Your workbench persists in afterimage, ghost needles stitching the dark. Circa 1802, a Yorkshire maid hid love letters beneath her cedar chest's false bottom. They crumbled unread for 9 decades. Floorboards whimper underfoot, each step a betrayal to the house's hunger for silence. You shrug off the guild medallion. Its weight leaves a scarlet groove above your breastbone. In the Solomon Islands, weavers believe unfinished projects lure night spirits to braid your hair with nettles. The thought almost makes you check the chest. Almost. Moonlight carves the room into slabs of silver and pitch. Your toe stubs a clay spindle under the bed. The curse dies in your throat. Archaeologists debate whether Egyptian sarcophagi influenced European chest designs, or just shared a universal dread of emptiness. The straw mattress swallows you, its lumps familiar as old enemies. Moths now hold counsel above their shadows, performing a play about your day's failures. Dutch dyers once paid children to sing to drying cloth, believing shrill voices set the colors faster. You almost hum, then remember the chest's mute vigil. Dawn lingers beyond the horizon. You count rafters to resist its pull. 17 beams cross the ceiling, one for each year you've bribed sleep with chamomile. A foundry in Toulouse crafted lock plates, depicting Lachesis measuring thread, all melted down during the bread riots of 1789. Your pinky throbs, the bloodstains phantom pulse. Historians still parse whether Byzantine embroiderers worked nude to avoid lint contamination. The mosaics suggest aprons at least. The chest mutters, or maybe it's your joints, or the mice in the walls. You curl toward the window, air sharp with impending frost. Some claim Catherine de Medici sewed poison pellets into her maids' aprons, but poison was always her third best weapon. A night bird cries, its voice flaying the dark. Your last thought stitches itself to the cedar scent, a promise to retrieve the apron come sunrise. Come winter. Come whatever need stitches a woman to her craft. The moths agree, their applause soft as falling lint. Dreams rise like warp threads, slick and vertical, as the looms of old Toledo. Your bare feet sink into sand that was wool yesterday, or was that last Tuesday? The air thrums, a sound like 100 spindles galloping toward deadlines. Historians love reminding us medieval weavers used urine to set dyes, but they skip how it smelled in August. A ghost loom materializes, its heddles clicking like a beetle's carapace. You reach for the shedding sword. It dissolves into spider silk across your palm. 3 phoenix feathers drift down, each barb tipped with blue fire. Gild tailies warned about spectral flax. It spins backward when liars touch it. Your left pinky twitches, the bloodstains echo, pulsing in time with the treadles. Someone hung Prussian blue ribbons from the rafters. They curl like question marks in the non-existent wind. 17th century French nuns wove altar cloths in their sleep. Or so the cardinal's confiscated letters claim. You pocket a loose thread. It writhes like a captured minnow. The floor tilts. Suddenly you're weaving a river. Shuttles dart silver as fish beneath indigo currents. Your apron strings tangle with kelp, each not a half-remembered guild maxim. Pull clockwise for humility, counter for revenge. A sturgeon surfaces wearing Master Ewan's spectacles. It mutters about selvages before dissolving into bubbles. You try laughing. It comes out as a warp-weighted sigh. Linen clouds unravel above, revealing a blackboard sky chalked with constellation drafts. Historians still argue whether Fibonacci's sequence guided Tudor embroidery or just looked pretty. You trace the Big Dipper. Its handle dribbles starry lint onto your sleeve. Something tugs your hem, a colony of buttonhole stitches skittering up your ankle. Their leader waves a frayed flag, a scrap from the apron you burned at 16. A thimble rolls past. You give chase through a canyon of pinking shears. It stops at a well where Ophelia's drowning in tangled bobbin lace. Her hair become a weft thread. She offers you a soggy crochet hook. The moths are coming. She lisps through rusted needle teeth. You decline politely. Guild rules forbid accepting tools from flood victims. The dream shifts. You're back at the cedar chest, but its carvings breathe. Lavender spills from the keyhole, purple smoke spelling go home. You lift the lid. 100 aprons surge out screeching Tudor ballads. Their waistbands cinch your ribs, glass buttons, leaving welted sonnets on your collarbone. A 1920s theorem claims all sewing songs originated with Sardinian widow wails. Your lungs test the theory. Something cold slips around your wrists, ghost threads glinting like frozen mercury. They pull taut, not to bind, but to lead. You stumble past a barn where sheep graze on patchwork quilts. Their bleats harmonize with the creak of an unmanned spinning wheel. A Norwich manuscript mentions dreamwalkers who darn time's torn seams, its margins crammed with doodled sheep. The threads yank you into a clearing, moonlight buttering a stone plinth. Upon it rests the first guildmother's needle, corroded yet humming middle C. You hum back. The vibration loosens the spectre threads. Archaeologists found a Viking grave with weaving tools arranged in a childbirth pose. They're still debating the symbolism. Your fingers hover. Does touching it make you heir or thief? The needle melts into starlight. Dawn bruises the eastern clouds. You feel the pallet's straw prickling your actual thigh. A raspberry moth alights on your nose. Its wings whisper next time. You smile into the weight of centuries, knowing full well Guildwomen never truly wake. Dawn licks the windowsill, its light gilding that lone button mocking you from the work table. The brass disc winks, still bare of its linen anchor. You stretch, knots in your shoulders, echoing the half-finished constellation on the apron bib. Historians adore debating why Tudor seamstresses left one stitch undone, piety or pride, or just pricked fingers, surrendering to supper. Your reason's simpler. Tomorrow tastes sweeter when today's feast has crumbs. The button glints, a miniature sundial tracking your procrastination. You pluck it up. It's warmer than metal should be at this hour. 17th century China's kissing buttons contained concealed poison compartments, a fact you'll file under useless, but cool. Threading the needle feels heavier today, as if the eye resists being filled. You hum last night's lavender smoke song, the one that spelled go home in curling purple tendrils. Fabric whispers beneath your palm, the apron's waistband already smelling of your own sweat and rosemary sachets. Memorize this crease here, the way the shoulder strap cups the collarbone like a conspirator. Guild apprentices once wore aprons inside out during storms, believing reversed seams warded off lightning. Rain taps the roof now. You consider flipping your hems just in case. Needle poised, you freeze. The buttonhole's eye stares back, pupilless and patient. A 1920s Parisian modiste claimed unsewn closures, trapped jealous spirits like flies in honey. She'd whisper to Vogue reporters, your scissors snicker in their cradle. They've tasted more midnight revisions than this button ever will. Out the window, a blacksmith's hammer clangs, each strike flattening time. The village bell tolls once, a sound like mother's shears hitting hardwood. Historians still argue whether medieval buttonholes were status symbols or just stab holes repurposed. You breathe linen dust and damp while blooming in your throat. That missing stitch won't haunt you, not when the guild archives bulge with deliberate imperfections. The thimble rolls, you let it. Let it wobble past skeins of undyed thread. Let it vanish under the dye vat's shadow. Morning hardens into noon, the button now casting twin shadows like a sundial's gilt. You slip it into your apron pocket, the same one hiding that dreamt river thread. It squirms against your thigh, a minnow turned accomplice. Sunset arrives smeared in honey hues. You press the unfinished apron to your chest. Waxed threads glint along the hem like a constellation chart. Somewhere, blind Master Ewan chuckles his phantom, shears snipping the tension. Night moths tap dance on the window pane, their wings scrawling almost in moonlit hieroglyphs. Tomorrow's needle awaits, hungry as ever. But for now, the unspun hours cradle your defiance. The last button winks from its pocket, a tiny moon refusing to set. The candle sputters its wick, curling into blackened lace. Smoke spirals upward, a gray serpent writing forgotten guild sigils on the air. Your breath stills, the same hush that follows a loom's final thread. Historians note medieval candle makers added crushed eggshells to wax to mute drips during night work. You wonder if those long-dead artisans ever tasted silence this thick, this complete. Fingers unclench, palms etched with the apron's thread grooves. Guildwomen of Lyon once buried their thimbles post-retirement, a ritual as strange as it sounds. Let the earth sow now, their proverb hummed through wine-stained teeth. Your own thimble winks from the shadows, still loyal after 12,000 stitches. Ash drifts onto the work table, forming a constellation of spent ambition. Some claim Tudor seamstress Margaret Latin encoded love letters in embroidery patterns, her rosebuds spelling treasonous endearments. The debate rages. Were those floral codes genius, or just historians seeing ghosts? Your needle lies dormant, its eye clogged with last night's resolve. Moonlight pries through shutters. It carves your silhouette into the floorboards. 3 centuries back, a Rotterdam guild required members to weave hair into aprons, proof against witchcraft's pull. You touch your braid, consider snipping a strand, but the scissors have gone cold. A moth lands on the candle holder, its wings powdered with time. 17 generations of aprons hang invisible in the air, their hems whispering against your ankles. You close your eyes, smell indigo and lanolin, and the sour tang of sleeplessness. The guild's eternal knot isn't in the threads, it's in the spaces between breaths. The last ember dies, a punctuation mark in the dark. Your hands finally empty, finally free, yet shaped forever to hold what no longer exists. Smoke sigils dissolve, taking their secrets back to the stars. The candle gutters, its flame now a fragile flicker against gathering shadows. Waxy tears pool at the base, those old trickles muted by long ago hands, mixing ash and eggshells into silence. Your exhale unwinds, threadbare as linen left too long in the sun. That apron cradled your hours, its threads humming guild songs, even when your hands grew still. Moonlight spills across the table, dust motes waltzing where needles once pierced cloth. They say Margaret Latin's embroidered roses held whispers, but tonight, every stitch feels like a lullaby. Your thimble rests, a tiny silver moon nesting in folded fabric. 17 generations sigh through the room, their aprons now just constellations of memory and mended seams. The last coal dims, its warmth surrendering to the hush. No more whispers of witchcraft or buried thimbles, only your own pulse, steady as a shuttle passing through the loom. Fingers unfold, empty, yet cradling the phantom weight of purpose. That eternal knot. It wasn't in the patterns, but here, in the slow unraveling of breath into stillness. Darkness settles soft as indigo-dyed wool. Let historians debate codes and kings. Your work is complete, knotted not with thread, but with patience. The scissors stay cold. The braid remains whole. You need not prove anything to the night. Smoke curls one final sigh, carrying secrets even the stars can't keep. Your hands, though empty, remember their purpose, and rest comes as gently as tomorrow's first stitch.